The Arizona sun was dipping low, casting golden streaks across the sprawling desert hills when the sirens started. They wailed through the quiet of Whispering Pines, a gated community where every lawn was manicured and every mailbox painted the same shade of sage green. I stepped out onto my porch, squinting against the flashing red and blue lights tearing down the road. 3 sheriff's deputies and an animal control officer screeched to a halt near the walking trail that bordered my ranch. At the center of the chaos stood Margaret Hensley, the HOA president, pointing like a general commanding a battlefield. "That's it. That's the trespassing beast," she shrieked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. The beast in question was a fluffy white goat named Daisy, her bell jingling softly as she nibbled a patch of clover 20 feet past my fence. I grabbed her leash and my old Senate ID, the one I hadn't flashed in years, and walked toward the scene. My name is William Harper, a retired U.S. Senator from Tennessee, a Marine veteran, and now a rancher on a slice of land just outside Whispering Pines jurisdiction. I'd bought this place for peace after losing my wife, Ellen, to cancer 3 years ago. Daisy wasn't just a pet, she was my therapy partner, the one who got me out of bed when grief pinned me down. Her gentle bleats and stubborn affection had pulled me through the darkest days, and I'd be damned if I let Margaret turn her into a neighborhood crisis. The deputies looked baffled as Margaret ranted about aggressive livestock and HOA lawsuits. One officer, a young guy with a crew cut, scratched his head. "Ma'am, it's a goat." Margaret's face reddened. "It's a menace. I want it impounded." That's when I stepped forward, holding up my ID. The air went still. Margaret's eyes widened, and the color drained from her face like water from a cracked bucket. "Senator Harper?" The lead deputy, Tom Bradley, asked, recognizing me from years back when we'd crossed paths at a veterans fundraiser. I nodded. "That's me. And this goat? She's my therapy animal, certified to help me and other veterans with PTSD. I turned to Margaret. "You might want to explain why you called 911 over a goat eating grass." The animal control officer stifled a laugh. Margaret stammered. You can't be serious." I didn't blink. "Dead serious. Now let's talk about who's trespassing here." The deputies exchanged glances, and I knew this was just the beginning. Let me take you back. I grew up on a small farm outside Memphis, where the smell of hay and the hum of cicadas were my world. After the Marines and decades in the Senate, I craved that simplicity again. So, I bought this ranch, 40 acres of freedom, explicitly outside Whispering Pines HOA boundaries. The deed was clear. I was sovereign land. But Margaret, with her pristine porch and fake roses, had other ideas. She'd started small. A week after I moved in, she showed up with a plate of store-bought cookies and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome to Whispering Pines, William. I'm Margaret, HOA president. If you need help with compliance, landscaping, fences, that sort of thing, I'm your gal." I thanked her, but explained my land wasn't under her rules. Her smile faltered, and I saw the first crack in her polished facade. Then came the notes. One taped to my gate read, "Please mow to HOA standard, 3 inches." Another complained that my cedar fence clashed with the aesthetic. She even called my wind chimes auditory pollution. I ignored it all, figuring she'd tire out. But then Daisy escaped. I'd left the gate open after fixing a fence post, and she wandered onto the trail, sniffing flowers and hopping on stones like a kid playing hopscotch. That's when Margaret saw her. I was sipping iced tea when her voice pierced the air. "Get back, you filthy animal," she yelled, flapping her arms like she was shooing a bear. Daisy just blinked, calm as ever. By the time I got outside, Margaret was on her phone, dialing 911. "There's a dangerous creature loose. I don't feel safe," she wailed. I leashed Daisy and waited for the circus to arrive. Now, standing with the deputies, I watched Margaret's confidence crumble. Tom, the lead deputy, turned to her. "Ma'am, this isn't an emergency. You're tying up resources." Margaret sputtered. "I'm protecting the community." I raised an eyebrow. From a goat in a pink vest that says certified therapy animal, the crowd that had gathered, neighbors drawn by the sirens, started to murmur. Some looked embarrassed, others amused. Tom jotted notes. "We'll file a report, Miss Hensley. This is your second false 911 call this month. There are consequences." Margaret's jaw dropped. "I'm the HOA president." Tom didn't flinch. "Then you should know better." She stormed off, muttering about calling the board. Daisy rubbed her head against my leg, oblivious to the storm she'd sparked. The next morning, I found a red sign staked at my ranch's entrance. Notice: illegal livestock operation. Remove animals immediately or face fines. Taped to it was a photo of Daisy with a red X scrawled across her face. My stomach churned. This wasn't just petty, it was personal. I called Tom, who arrived in plain clothes to document the sign. "This is harassment," he said, shaking his head. "We'll keep an eye on it." But Margaret wasn't done. A week later, my neighbor Sarah, a kind-hearted schoolteacher and single mom, came to me in tears. "Margaret's threatening to evict me," she said. "She claims I'm violating HOA codes by bringing my kids to your goat yoga classes." I clenched my fists. Margaret was dragging innocence into her vendetta. "No one's touching you or your kids," I promised. But deep down, I knew this was war. Then came the letter. Slipped into my mailbox with no return address. It read, "Senator or not, your presence disrupts our peaceful community. Leave quietly, or the HOA will ensure your removal legally or otherwise." That night, I spotted a dark SUV idling near my barn, a camera lens glinting from the window. When I approached, it sped off. My ranch wasn't just under attack, it was under siege. The Arizona nights were usually quiet, the kind of stillness that lets you hear your thoughts. But that peace was shattered at 2:30 a.m. when my phone rang, buzzing like a hornet on the nightstand. It was Jack, my ranch foreman, his voice tight with panic. "Boss, get out here now." I yanked on my boots, heart pounding, and ran barefoot into the dark. Smoke hit me first, thick, acrid, curling into the sky. Flames roared from the tool shed at the far end of the ranch, lighting up the night like a warning flare. Jack was already there, coughing as he battled the blaze with a fire extinguisher. "It's bad, sir," he shouted, tossing a wet blanket over a pile of smoldering feed bags. I grabbed a shovel, desperate to help, but my eyes darted to Daisy's pen. The gate was wide open, the latch undone. She was gone. My chest tightened. Daisy didn't open the gates. Someone had been here. Someone had set this fire. Someone had taken her. "Jack, you see her?" I yelled, scanning the fence line. He shook his head, eyes red from smoke. "She was in her pen an hour ago, I swear." I called 911, my voice steady despite the chaos. "Fire at Harper Ranch, and my therapy goat's missing." This was no accident. Within minutes, a fire truck and 3 deputies roared up. They contained the blaze, but the shed was a charred skeleton, melted tools, scorched ropes, gone. The fire chief confirmed it. Accelerants were used, no electrical fault. "Arson." Deputy Tom Bradley approached, his face grim. "William, this is serious. Arson and theft." I nodded, my jaw tight. Daisy's gate was opened. Someone took her. Tom's eyes narrowed. "Any guesses who?" I didn't say her name, but we both knew. Margaret Hensley, the HOA queen who declared war on a goat. I pulled up the trail cam footage from earlier that night. At 1:57 a.m., a hooded figure crept along the fence, poured liquid around the shed, and struck a match. The flames caught fast. Then, the figure walked to Daisy's pen, unlatched the gate, and led her away with a rope. The camera caught a limp in their stride. Margaret's limp, from twisting her ankle last month chasing a kid over a dog leash violation. Tom exhaled. "That's enough for a warrant, but she'll deny everything." Margaret had influence. Neighbors either feared her or followed her to avoid her wrath. Still, I went door to door. Sarah, my neighbor, gasped when I showed her the grainy footage. "That's her," she whispered. "Will you testify?" I asked. She hesitated, knowing Margaret's vindictiveness, but nodded. "For you. For Daisy." By noon, Tom had the footage in processing, and I prepared a public statement not as a senator, but as a man fed up. That afternoon, I held a press conference at the ranch's edge. Local news crews gathered, drawn by the arson story. "My name is William Harper," I began, holding up Daisy's photo. "This is my therapy goat. She helps me and veterans cope with trauma. Last night, someone set my shed on fire and stole it. I don't care about politics or squabbles. I care about kindness, respect. No one has the right to terrorize animals or destroy property." The story exploded. "Justice for Daisy" trended online. Photos of her pink vest went viral. Strangers sent messages, donations, even a goat-sized cowboy hat. But Margaret stayed silent until the next night. I was on the porch, nursing a headache, when headlights flashed near the trail. A silver hatchback pulled up, and I heard a soft bleat. Daisy. I ran. She was tied to a tree, tired but unharmed. No note, just returned. Margaret was nervous, trying to cover her tracks. But she'd slipped up. The trail cam caught her face, clear as day, dragging Daisy back. I handed the footage to Tom. Time to knock on her door, he said. But before he could act, chaos struck again. That afternoon, Jack and I were rebuilding the fence when a black pickup truck roared through the front gate, splintering it like kindling. Tire tracks gouged the earth. Jack gripped his hammer. No plates, tinted windows. They meant to do this. Tom arrived, inspecting the wreckage. Third crime in 72 hours: arson, theft, now this. I looked at him. Enough for an arrest? He sighed. We're close, but if we move too fast, she'll cry political persecution. We do this right. I nodded, but I was done playing defense. Margaret was testing how far she could push before I pushed back. The next morning, I called a town hall not as a senator, but as a neighbor. The community center was packed, faces nervous, angry, and ashamed. Sarah spoke first, her voice shaking but firm. Margaret runs this HOA like a dictator. She finds single moms for bikes on porches, families for holiday decorations. This war on William and Daisy? It's too far. Others chimed in. A man fined $500 for a grill, a teen shamed for hanging laundry. The room buzzed as Margaret's spell over Whispering Pines cracked. I spoke last. I've tried to be respectful, but when someone threatens my animals, my friends, my peace, I won't stay silent. I held up Daisy's photo. This goat got me through losing my wife. She helps veterans find peace. Someone tried to burn her away. Applause erupted. Neighbors shook my hand, apologizing for their silence. It felt like a turning point, but it wasn't over. That night, Margaret appeared. Her Range Rover screeched to a stop by the broken gate, headlights off. She stormed out in a robe, throwing an envelope at my feet. You humiliated me, she spat. Let's see how they feel when this goes public. Inside were doctored photos of my goat yoga events, veterans drinking beer, one lighting a cigar captioned with lies, illegal gatherings, unlicensed alcohol, possible drugs. You're smearing me? I asked, voice steady. You brought this on yourself, she screamed. You're an outsider. Your senator title doesn't make you untouchable. I stepped closer. I never claimed to be above anything. I just don't answer you. Her face twisted. You want war, William? You got it. She sped off into the night. I showed the photos to Tom. She's fishing, he said. These won't stick. I nodded. Then it's time I pull my card. I called the state attorney general's office not as a senator, but as a citizen with evidence of arson, theft, and harassment. By nightfall, the news broke. HOA misconduct under state review. Senator files complaint. Margaret was watching, and her next move would be her worst. 2 days later, Jack disappeared. He'd gone to buy feed, but never returned. His phone was found smashed near the HOA clubhouse. Jack was military through and through, punctual, loyal. This wasn't an accident. I called Tom. He's missing. His phone was dumped on HOA land. I think Margaret's behind it. Tom didn't hesitate. Deputies searched, but Jack's truck never reached town. He was gone, and I knew where to look. That night, I sat on the porch with Daisy, a shotgun across my lap. At 2 a.m., Sarah ran up, breathless, holding a cloth-wrapped object. I found this under my deck, she whispered. It was an HOA walkie-talkie, labeled Unit 3 Patrol East, with blood on the corner. You didn't touch it? I asked. No, used gloves. My heart sank. This was a lead. The blood on the HOA walkie-talkie felt like a punch to the gut. I handed it to Deputy Tom Bradley by sunrise, my hands steady despite the rage simmering inside. This was under Sarah's deck, I said. Someone hid it, and I'm betting it ties to Jack's disappearance. Tom's jaw tightened as he bagged the evidence. We'll rush it to the lab. Any idea who it belongs to? I didn't need to guess. Margaret Hensley's shadow loomed over every move. By mid-morning, Tom called with news. The walkies from a batch issued to Margaret's volunteer HOA patrol. Only 6 exist. This one was signed out to Carl Dempsey, her cousin. He's got a rap sheet assault, lost his security license after a bar fight. I exhaled slowly. Where is he? Tom paused. Not home. Not answering. We've got a BULO out. My mind raced. Jack, my loyal foreman, was out there, and Margaret's family was closing ranks. I gathered my trusted circle in the barn: Sarah, Tom, two ranch hands, and a local reporter named Emily Carter, who'd been covering the HOA feud from the start. "This isn't about Daisy anymore," I said, my voice low. "It's about control. Margaret thinks she can bully this town into submission, and now she's hurting people." Emily leaned forward. "You're saying she's behind Jack's disappearance?" I met her gaze. "I'm not saying it. I'm proving it. We launched our search ATVs, a drone Jack had set up for cattle monitoring, and every pair of eyes I could trust. Then we found it. Behind the HOA clubhouse, tucked behind storage sheds, stood an old utility building, listed as abandoned. But the trail cam we'd mounted caught movement. Carl Dempsey, slipping in and out at odd hours. Tom took the footage to a judge, and a warrant was signed within the hour. What they found inside broke the case wide open. Jack, bound to a chair, gagged, with cuts on his face and bruises on his ribs. He'd been held for 36 hours, guarded by Carl, who vanished just before the police stormed in. Medics rushed Jack to safety as he croaked. They said I needed to send a message. That you were ruining the community. That if I stayed loyal, I'd disappear for good. My blood boiled. Margaret had crossed a line no one could ignore. Within hours, Carl was arrested trying to flee the county, with Margaret's emergency HOA credit card in his wallet. Tom slapped the cuffs on him, handing him over to the feds. But Margaret? Her house was empty, electronics and documents gone. She'd run. The FBI stepped in, classifying the case as organized community harassment and interstate flight. Margaret Hensley, HOA tyrant, was a fugitive. The news exploded. Senators' ranch war sparks manhunt. Headlines painted Margaret as a petty dictator, Daisy as a symbol of resistance. Neighbors rallied, veterans from my goat yoga classes patrolled the ranch, and someone made Team Daisy shirts with her pink vest on the front. But Margaret's parting shot haunted me. 3 nights after Jack's rescue, a crash woke me. I ran to the porch, flashlight in hand, and found a rain-soaked note pinned to my door. "This isn't over. I have friends everywhere. M." I handed it to Tom at dawn. "She's taunting you," he said, scanning the note for prints. "She's planning something big." I doubled security motion lights, more cameras, a generator from Sarah in case Margaret cut the power. Jack, still bruised, refused to rest. "Ain't letting her scare me," he growled, strapping on a radio. We were ready, but the storm was coming. It hit 3 nights later, during a torrential rain. The power went out at midnight, plunging the ranch into darkness. Daisy's bleats turned frantic, her hooves banging the pen's floor. I grabbed a flashlight, Jack right behind me, and ran to the barn. A silhouette moved inside. Jack flung the door open, shouting, "Freeze!" The figure bolted through the rear hatch, but Tom had deputies stationed at the fence. They tackled the intruder in the mud. It wasn't Margaret, it was her lawyer, Victor Lang, the man who'd defended HOA lawsuits for years. Soaked and furious, he glared as Tom cuffed him. A search of his bag revealed bolt cutters, a burner phone, a flash drive, and blueprints of my ranch, including Daisy's pen. "You were after the goat again," I said, voice low. Victor's teeth clenched. "You made her desperate. She's protecting what's hers." "What's hers?" I snapped. "This land, Daisy. She doesn't own anyone." Then he slipped up. "She's waiting at the overlook. Said you'd come. Said you'd see the truth." Tom froze. "Where?" Victor muttered. "Canyon overlook, past mile marker 9. It was a trap, but I wasn't backing down." We geared up 2 trucks, 3 deputies, Jack, Tom, and me. Daisy stayed with Sarah, safe under lock and camera. The overlook was a 15-minute drive, pitch black except for lightning slicing the sky. We arrived at 1 a.m. At first, it was empty. Then we saw her, Margaret, in a hooded coat, rain dripping down her face, hands trembling. "Hello, William," she said, voice sharp. "You brought guests." I stepped forward. "You didn't say I had to come alone. What do you want to say?" She laughed bitterly. "I built Whispering Pines. Every neighbor, every flower, every mailbox, I made it perfect. Then you came with your goats, your farm stench, your war stories. People stopped listening to me." I held her gaze. "I didn't take anything from you." She screamed. "You made them love you. You made me invisible. Even Carl said you were the future." Lightning flashed, illuminating her desperation. "You abducted Jack," I said. "You burned my shed. You tried to steal Daisy. You turned this town into a war zone." She shook, voice breaking. "You think you're the hero? You're just another man taking over. I'll burn it all before you win. She pulled a small remote. Tom yelled, "Get back." She pressed it. Nothing happened. She stabbed the button again, confused. Tom stepped forward, calm. "That device was jammed the moment you showed up. We've got tech in the trucks. You're not blowing anything up." Margaret collapsed, screaming into the wind. "This was mine." Tom cuffed her, reading her rights. As they led her to the truck, she twisted toward me. "This won't stop them." I paused. "Who?" She smirked and turned away. By sunrise, the ranch was calm. Power restored. Daisy munched grass while Sarah's daughter braided ribbons into her fur. News stations ran the story. HOA tyrant arrested after ranch feud. But Margaret's words, "This won't stop them," gnawed at me. Then, a new letter arrived. Gold HOA seal, no name. It demanded my attendance at a mandatory compliance hearing for disrupting community harmony. At the bottom, a new board, led by Margaret's sister, Diane Hensley. The letter from the HOA, with its gold seal and crisp, threatening prose, landed like a stone in still water. Even with Margaret Hensley behind bars, her influence rippled on through her sister, Diane, now the newly minted HOA president. The note demanded I appear at a mandatory compliance hearing to answer for unauthorized livestock, unapproved events, and disruption of community harmony. It threatened fines, liens, and eviction absurd, since my ranch sat firmly outside their jurisdiction. I handed it to Jack, my foreman, who was still nursing bruises from his abduction. He scanned it, snorted, and tossed it into the trash. "They're not done, are they?" he said. I shook my head. "Not yet, but we'll finish this." I called Deputy Tom Bradley. "This is a bluff," he said, his voice crackling over the phone. "Your land's exempt. They can't touch you." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the Arizona hills. "Doesn't matter. They're trying to scare me, make it look official. I'm going to that hearing, but I'm not going alone." Tom sighed. "What's the plan, William?" I smiled. "You'll see." The hearing was set for Wednesday at 10 a.m. at the Whispering Pines Clubhouse, a squat building with beige walls and fake ivy crawling up the columns. I didn't show up in my battered ranch truck. Instead, I rolled in with my government-issued SUV, flanked by 2 veterans from my security detail and a federal investigator, Agent Laura Mitchell, assigned to monitor HOA abuses after Margaret's arrest. Local news vans were already parked outside, cameras rolling. Emily Carter, the reporter who'd been covering the saga, gave me a nod as I stepped out, wearing jeans, a plain shirt, and a cap that read, "Ranchers Know Best." Sarah, my neighbor, was there too, her kids holding hand-painted signs, "Let Daisy stay," and "No more HOA bullies." A crowd of neighbors gathered, some clutching Team Daisy shirts, others just curious. The air buzzed with tension as I walked into the clubhouse. Diane Hensley sat at the head of a long table, her gray suit starched, pearls gleaming, hands folded over a stack of HOA regulations. Her eyes narrowed as I entered, her contempt barely veiled. "Senator Harper," she said, her voice dripping with false courtesy. "Thank you for gracing us with your presence." I nodded, taking a seat. "Let's make this quick, Diane." She cleared her throat, reading from a prepared statement. "You're here to address multiple violations: unauthorized livestock on recreational trails, unapproved social events, unregistered guests, and disruption of HOA harmony." I couldn't help I chuckled. Disruption of harmony? That's straight out of a self-help book. A few board members shifted uncomfortably, and the room's tension broke with muffled laughter from the crowd. Diane's face stayed stone cold. "You're not above our laws, Senator." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "I'm not under your laws. My ranch is exempt, as you well know. I've got the deeds, the zoning papers, and a federal case file proving your sister committed felonies to bully me off my land." I slid the file across the table. "Your threats are baseless. Your fines are fake. And if you come after me or my neighbors again, you won't just face angry ranchers, you'll face Congress." The board froze. Diane gripped her papers, her knuckles white. "We can pursue civil action," she said, but her voice wavered. "No, you won't," I replied, standing. I turned to the door, where Emily and her camera crew waited. "We're live," she whispered, broadcasting to 3 counties. I faced the camera, my voice clear. "This isn't just my fight. It's every American's fight who has been pushed around by people who think power gives them the right to abuse others. HOAs exist to protect communities, not terrorize them. Today, I say no more. The room erupted cheers, applause, even a few whistles. Diane's composure cracked, her lips trembling. By afternoon, she resigned, citing media bias and political bullying. No one bought it. The news spread like wildfire. HOA president quits after senators stand. But the real victory came later. The state launched a full audit of Whispering Pines HOA, uncovering falsified fines, manipulated voting records, and kickbacks from contractors. Lawsuits piled up, and HOA reform groups hailed the case as a landmark. Back at the ranch, we rebuilt. The new fence gleamed, the shed was sturdier than ever, and Jack's bruises faded. Sarah's kids ran free again, laughing as they chased Daisy across the pasture. Daisy herself became a national icon. Strangers sent her vests, hats, even a tiny pair of sunglasses. One morning, I found a new sign on the gate, painted by Sarah's son, Harper Ranch, home of freedom and one brave goat. I hung it with pride. But peace was fragile. A week after the hearing, Emily called me. "William, I've got something you need to see." She came by with a folder of emails, leaked from an anonymous source inside the HOA. They detailed a secret meeting where Diane and a few loyalists had planned to neutralize me, not with violence, but with a smear campaign. They'd hired a PR firm to paint me as a corrupt politician abusing my title. The plan collapsed when Diane resigned, but the emails hinted at a deeper network: other HOAs, other towns, sharing tactics to control residents. I sat with Emily on the porch, Daisy curled beside me. "This goes beyond Whispering Pines," she said. "Margaret and Diane weren't acting alone. There's a pattern: HOAs across the state pulling the same stunts." I nodded, my mind racing. "Then we keep fighting. Not just for my ranch, but for everyone stuck under these petty tyrants." Emily smiled. "I'm in. Let's break this story wide open." The next day, I met with Agent Mitchell. She confirmed the emails aligned with her investigation into HOA corruption. "We're building a case," she said. "Your fight's shining a light on something much bigger." I felt a spark of hope, but also dread. Margaret's final words, "This won't stop them," echoed. Who were they? Other HOA leaders? A network of control freaks? I didn't know, but I wasn't backing down. That evening, I hosted a barbecue for the neighbors who'd stood by me. Veterans, families, and even a few former HOA members who'd apologized for staying silent. Sarah's kids fed Daisy carrots while Jack grilled burgers. The sunset painted the hills gold, and for the first time in months, I laughed without looking over my shoulder. But as the fire crackled, I couldn't shake the feeling that the war wasn't over. The next morning, a delivery truck dropped off a package with no return address. Inside was a single photo of Daisy, taken from a distance, with a note. "You won the battle, but the war goes on." My heart sank. I called Tom, who arrived within the hour. "No prints, no leads," he said, bagging the photo. "But it's a message. Someone's still watching." I nodded, gripping Daisy's leash. "Let them watch. We're ready." The community rallied stronger than ever. Veterans volunteered to patrol the ranch, and Emily's articles kept the pressure on. The state audit expanded, forcing 3 more HOA boards to dissolve. Daisy's fame grew. Her face appeared on T-shirts, mugs, even a local brewery's IPA label. But I stayed vigilant, knowing the fight for freedom never truly ends. The anonymous note and the photo of Daisy lingered in my mind like a stubborn weed, but I refused to let it choke the peace we'd fought for. Harper Ranch stood stronger than ever: new fences, a rebuilt shed, and a community that had found its voice. Daisy, the fluffy white goat who'd sparked it all, pranced through the pasture, her bell jingling as Sarah's kids braided pink ribbons into her fur. The Arizona sun rose over the hills, painting the sky with hope, but I knew better than to let my guard down. Margaret Hensley was in jail, her sister Diane had resigned in disgrace, and the Whispering Pines HOA was under a state audit. Yet, that note, "You won the battle, but the war goes on," hinted at shadows still lurking. I sat on the porch with Deputy Tom Bradley, sipping coffee as we reviewed the latest. "The photo's a dead end," he said, frustration creasing his brow. "No prints, no trace. But the feds are digging into those leaked HOA emails Emily brought you. They're finding connections: other HOAs, same playbook, fines, intimidation, even hired muscle." I nodded, my jaw tight. Margaret wasn't the mastermind, was she? Tom shook his head. She was a cog in a bigger machine. We're close to cracking it. That afternoon, I met with Emily Carter, the reporter who'd turned our fight into a national story. She spread documents across my kitchen table, more leaked emails, financial records, even a memo from a shadowy group called the Community Standards Alliance. "This is bigger than Whispering Pines," she said, her eyes bright with determination. HOAs across Arizona, Nevada, and even California share tactics to control residents. Margaret's stunts fake fines, threats, arson theory straight from their manual. I leaned back, processing. "So what's next?" Emily grinned. "We go public. I've got a feature ready for the state's biggest paper, tying your case to this network. But I need your voice, William, not as a senator, but as the rancher who stood up." I hesitated. The spotlight wasn't my style anymore, but this wasn't about me. It was about Sarah, Jack, Daisy, and every neighbor bullied by petty tyrants. "I'm in," I said. "Let's burn their house down figuratively." The article dropped 3 days later, headlined, "Senator's Goat Exposes HOA Corruption Empire." Emily wove our story: Daisy's escape, Margaret's 911 call, the arson, Jack's abduction, into a damning expose of the Community Standards Alliance. It named names, linked bank accounts, and quoted whistleblowers from other HOAs. Justice for Daisy trended again, this time alongside indicia tyranny. Protests erupted outside HOA offices in Phoenix and Tucson. The feds raided 2 alliance fronts, seizing computers and arresting mid-level operatives. Whispering Pines felt the shockwaves. The HOA board dissolved entirely, replaced by a temporary council led by Sarah, who vowed transparency. Neighbors tore down old compliance signs and threw a block party on the trail where Daisy had wandered. Veterans from my goat yoga classes grilled hot dogs. Kids painted Team Daisy banners, and someone played Johnny Cash on a Bluetooth speaker. I stood with Jack, watching Daisy nibble clover, and felt a weight lift. But I kept one eye on the horizon. A week later, Agent Laura Mitchell called. "We've got a break," she said. "One of the Alliance's top dogs flipped. He's naming everyone, including who sent that photo of Daisy. It wasn't Margaret or Diane, it was a lawyer tied to the Alliance, trying to keep you scared." I exhaled, relief mixing with resolve. "Where's the lawyer now?" Laura's voice hardened. "In custody. We're dismantling their network, William. Your fight gave us the leverage." The arrests made headlines. HOA scandal bust, Senator's ranch case, Sparks crackdown. The Community Standards Alliance collapsed, its leaders facing charges from fraud to racketeering. Whispering Pines became a symbol of resistance, and Daisy Sweet, Stubborn Daisy, was its mascot. She got fan mail, a custom harness with Freedom Goat embroidered on it, and an invite to a veterans charity gala in Phoenix. I laughed when Sarah suggested dressing her in a tiny tuxedo. But the real victory was quieter. One morning, I walked the ranch with Jack, checking fences. He was back to his old self, cracking jokes about Navy days. "You think we're done with trouble, boss?" he asked, squinting at the hills. I smiled. "Trouble's always out there, Jack. But we've got Daisy, good neighbors, and a hell of a story." He chuckled. "Damn right." That evening, I hosted a final gathering, not a barbecue, but a thank you. Neighbors, veterans, even Emily and Tom, sat around a bonfire. Sarah's kids performed a skit about Daisy the Brave, complete with a cardboard goat. We laughed, shared stories, and toasted to freedom, not just from the HOA, but from fear. I stood, holding a glass of sweet tea, and spoke. "This ranch was my refuge, but you all made it a home. Daisy started this, but you finished it. Thank you." As the fire died down, I sat with Daisy, her head resting on my knee. The stars were bright, the air cool, and the silence was the kind that heals. The war was over, not because the enemy was gone, but because we'd built something stronger than their hate. The sign on my gate, Harper Ranch, home of freedom and one brave goat, glowed under a new motion light. I'd never take it down. The next day, Emily published a follow-up, How a Goat Changed America's Neighborhoods. It detailed new laws, HOA reform bills passing in 3 states, capping fines, mandating elections, and banning intimidation. My name was in it, but so were Sarah's, Jack's, and Daisy's. We weren't just a story, we were a movement. I framed the article and hung it in the barn, next to Daisy's pink vest. Months later, I got a letter, not a threat, but a thank you from a stranger in Nevada. Her HOA had backed off after she cited our case. More letters followed, from Texas, Florida, Ohio, people standing up, inspired by a goat, and a rancher who refused to bend. I kept everyone a reminder that small fights can spark big change. Now, as I write this, Daisy's asleep in her pen, the ranch is quiet, and Whispering Pines is just a neighborhood again. No tyrants, no fear. I'm not a senator anymore, just William Harper, a man who loves his land, his goat, and his people. But if trouble comes knocking, we'll be ready. Because even a goat can stand her ground, and so can we. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Harper Ranch, Daisy's defiance, and the fall of an HOA empire. This story isn't just about a goat or a senator, it's about power, pride, and the courage to fight injustice, no matter how small it seems. Have you ever faced a Margaret in your life, someone who used authority to bully or control? How did you stand up? What do you think about the role of violence in this story, from arson to abduction, and the line between justice and vengeance? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective and where you stand. Let's keep this conversation alive and inspire each other to protect our communities, our freedom, and maybe even a goat or two.